you mentioned you like hunting the lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of one of those things. I think this is one of those secrets that we're prying out of you. So tell me about that, because a lot of people hate the lockdown, which again is kind of that middle part of the rut. Most of your does are in heat; those bucks are on them. So explain your thought process about that time of year.
Well, lockdown, the deal, my theory on the lockdown is they don't move a lot. So if you're scouting, you jump a deer with a doe. It's on a doe, big buck and a doe by themselves. They're not going to go very far, right? At all. They'll run from this cover you busted them out of to the next one, and 9 times out of 10, if he's got her locked down the cane ticket on the edge of the river right here, when you get out of there, he's coming right back in there with her because he's got a spot he likes to guard her. There's food, there's water, everything they need's right there, right? So he's going to keep her pretty close because he don't want her them venturing out and smelling, getting wind of her. You know, he's got her at a place where he thinks he's got the advantage on the other bucks. Some satellite bucks come in on him, younger bucks try to get in there, get to her, you know, whatever. He's got a place that he thinks he can fend them off. So he's going to keep her right there, right? 200 or 300 yards, maybe 4, little area, right? They can stay there a week. Might stay there a week. Here's the deal. The sign's going to be there. The doe feed sign's what you key in on first, and then you'll see these big aggressive rubs where he's just peeling trees, like gouging them. Sometimes there'll be shavings, white shavings on the ground. Okay? And then they'll be popping up. There's 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? Looks like made the same day. Get over here. Here's one that's a little bit fresher. I'm finding the first feed tree in there that's got doe feed sign around it, and I'm getting in the tree right there, around where he's got those big rubs and everything. And 9 times out of 10, he'll be dead that evening. You know, I mean, I'm trying to think of one I didn't see him or kill him that day. At least see him for sure. You know, sometimes they like I said, they're locked down. They don't move a lot. Sometimes you see them just here. They'll get up, come over here. She'll feed a little bit. He might hook her around. This buck right here I killed, it was the gun hunt had been in. The gun hunt had closed the day before that. And I went in there, and like I said, I went in there scouting that day. I scouted till noon, went and got my arm x-rayed. I flipped the 4-wheeler, and then went back in there about 2 and went run just kind of wanted to just check something out real quick. I had a feeling. Went back in there, I found a sign where he'd locked her down. There's rubs, big aggressive scrapes at the base of the rubs. Her feed sign looked like 2 does had been feeding in there by the droppings and stuff for probably a week, you know. And I got in the tree and I heard something, just kind of a little crashing noise, and I looked up to the right. It's 4 o'clock, my magic hour, 4 o'clock. But I looked to the right, and there he run her out, and then she just kept standing there, and that's when he come up and hooked her, and he turned her. She come right in, and I'd split 2 feed trays I was feeding on. There was a cow about 25 yards in front of me, cow about 25 yards behind me, and they both had about the equal amount of food sign around them. And my wind was good for both of them, but it was more iffy for the one, of course, she went to. And then he's coming in straight to me. He got behind a big old tupelo tree in that slough. I couldn't see him for it seemed like 10 minutes. I was like, is he still there? You know what I mean? And he's facing me, and then he stepped out, and I had to shoot him in the chest about 30 yards. But when he finally stepped up behind that tree, I killed him, but I was nervous she was going to get my wind any time. But yeah, he had her locked down in there for 4 or 5 days, right there in that same area during a gun hunt. And nobody shot him. But I mean, you could tell by the sign they had been there. You know what I mean?
And that makes sense about how those big bucks survive those gun hunts and everything during the rut. Again, talking the big mature deer, is they're on that doe that knows how to stay alive. A long muzzled doe.
Yeah.
You know, they know how to bust you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just hanging out. So you're saying you'll go in and intentionally try to find that lockdown sign, heavy concentration of buck sign all in one spot, and then find the closest food source to that with doe sign on it and hunt the doe sign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's together. The buck sign and the doe sign be there together, but the doe's only, he might pick up an acre or 2, but he ain't worried about eating nothing. You know, he's worried about something trying to come in and take that doe from him. But, you know, the does are doing the same thing they've been doing. You know, And, you know, it goes back to the old story. Her place or mine, where are you going? Your place or mine, you know what I mean? So it's definitely going to be her place on that deal. So
let me ask you this. Talked about the lockdown. Do you need to physically see and or bump that buck and that doe to have confidence in it, or is it just find that sign?
I'd rather not bump them, really. I didn't bump them that evening, but I have bumped them and killed them on the same day, too. So.
So okay,
Crazy to think about.
Yeah, I want to run this by you. So I experienced this, like a true lockdown situation in Kansas last year. Happened twice. Walking up on one buck, it was high wind situation, rain. He was bedded down with a doe. We got within 40 yards of him in this oak flat, and we talked about this last year. Anyways, I ended up not looking at my camera guy was with me. He's like, he's right here next to this log laying down. Well, there's multiple logs in front of me. I'm fixated on one log that's like 70 yards. And he's like, dude, knock an arrow. I'm like, dude, that's too far. I can't shoot that. I can't see the deer. I'm glassing. He stands up and he's right here to my right. And I was looking at the wrong spot.
Oh, man.
And then later in the hunt, ended up jumping a mega giant, locked down with a doe, and had a satellite buck kind of off the edge of him. And he had pinned her up against kind of a little peninsula, went out into a slough, had sloughs on each side, and he was on the end of it with that doe. In those circumstances, specifically maybe the one around the slough, is that one of those things, if you were to jump a big deer like that, that's like actually locked down with a doe, maybe had a satellite buck kind of like he's keeping off of her, you jump them, they bump off. Is that when you would go into that spot like right then and start circling and looking?
Yeah.
And then you're looking for the feed sign along with that big sign, right?
Yeah, and Kansas is a little different here because those deer are used to wide open. That deer might run 3 miles across the open, you know what I mean? But here, they ain't going to run that far. Everything's thick. It's in the woods, you know what I mean? They're going to just run till they get a little bit of cover, and they're stopping, you know? Because 9 times out of 10, they don't know if it was unless they get your wind, they don't know if it's a coyote bumped them or a human or a tree fell. You know what I mean? A lot of times to a deer, people think deer's so smarter than what they are. They're smart, don't get me wrong. They got an instinct that's out of this world. But the deal with them is that it's all instinct. They don't build houses and live in them, you know. They don't. They live out in the weather 24/7. They know where to get and where to hide and how to stay alive. They know by their instinct whether they're hit or not. That's just like you ever walk up on a big buck by himself in a situation where he thinks he's hid and you're out in the open. What's he gonna do? He's hanging tight on you. You know what I mean? He's gonna hang tight, and that's their instinct. They know that, and a lot of people don't realize that how simple it is to hunt and kill them like that. But when you jump one, especially if he's in the spot where he's got all the sign and everything's just ripped like that, he's coming back in there because she's coming back. You know, they might make a circle. It might be that evening. You jump in the middle of the day, it might be that evening. It might be the next morning. But they'll be back in there. As long as he's on that doe, it's probably going to be right there in the same spot. You know, and I've seen them stay on them does up to a week sometimes, you know.
Yeah, that spot he's talking about, I had, let me think. I think I'd maybe just killed my buck further back in there. I was going past the spot, and we were coming out, and it was dark. And when we were coming out, we saw, I don't know if it was the same deer, but we saw a giant deer with a doe right there. And he went back in like 2 days later and jumped it. I mean, probably 150 yards from that spot.
It was the next afternoon we went in there.
Right there.
And he was right there. And looking back, we ended up setting off that sign, setting off that slough to the next little ridge point over, and saw a doe. That was it. But it made me wonder now, talking to a guy like you, because we haven't really interviewed anybody that like has success during that lockdown period, which lockdown, by the way, is a term that gets a lot of people fired up because they're like, they're not really locked down. They're just, you're in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
But if you're hunting mature deer is locking down with a doe and, holding her tight, unless you're right on top of them, like you said, you're not going to see him. It's going to be like he disappeared, crawled on a rock for 4 days. So it's interesting having a guy like you that's had success focusing on that time period. And I guess as a lot of it just put in more, like when you're getting close to that time range of when they should be, really locking out with these does, these mature bucks, are you trying to cover more ground at that point?
Well, y'all want to know my daily ritual?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I go in the morning. In November, I don't hunt mornings till November, right? And then I go in, I start hunting mornings. November, say 10th, so from then on through the through the month of November, I hunt morning and evening. But so far in there, a lot of times, I'm in there all day. So what I do, I hunt to 10 o'clock. I get down and I scout till 2:30. I get back up in the tree. I do that 6 days a week. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my ritual. You spend that much time, you usually find what you want, you know. And my buddy from Pennsylvania, Brandon Tuck, he come down here to hunt with me a few days, and he's like, man, he's like, you've been doing this for 2 months. He said, I'm wore out. And he's in really good shape. Stuff. He said, I'm wore out already. He said, you've been at it for like a month and a half already. But yeah, I mean, it's not something. My success don't come instantly. Usually, I have something, but I believe I got a system. You get in there, you put the work in, you set up the best you can on what you got to work with, and you'll. I mean, you put the time in, you'll get them. You'll kill them. That's the way I believe. It's just you. Sometimes it takes a lot of hard work to get what you want out of life. It's the same way with the woods. Sometimes you got to work it a little harder than you do. Sometimes it's a gimme. You know what I mean? It's just all about what you find and what you do with it.
Yeah.
100%.
So, so you're, I mean, again, common theme, a lot of guys in Arkansas we talk to are like this. Like, you are very much during season on your feet, burning boot leather every day, trying to find something better until you find it, and then you might hunt it for a couple days.
Yeah, then I'm on in the game then. But if I'm not seeing what I want, I'm moving and burning and going, you know.
And then just one more question on that buck you're talking about. You said that you went in there and you found those feed trees, and it looked like maybe 2 does have been feeding on them. Mm-hmm. What's that look like? How are you determining that?
Droppings, older, going to newer, both bigger droppings, saying they're 2 mature does, you know what I mean? It's not a doe and a baby because dropping size be little. But you can see it looks like the same doe, busted acorn. Those cow oaks are swamp chestnuts, you know, whatever they want to call them. They're big. You know, they're eating them, you can tell. I mean, it's not like they're picking them up whole or anything. They're busting those. There's busted acorns laying there. You know, it goes back. Some of them's brand new, fresh, still white on the inside of the peels. And some of them's old, you know, and brown. And you can tell by the sign that, you know, just kind of I can by, you know, she's been in here feeding. This is where she's been for the last week or so. She's found her a good food source right here, and she's staying with it, you know. And then all of a sudden, all this big sign starts blowing up in here, you know, that wasn't here, you know. I hadn't been in there that year, but you could tell by the sign it was fresh. All of it was fresh, made in the last 4 or 5 days. But you could tell it was made in different times, you know, too. And like there was one little bush that kind of caught my attention. How, like, I could just portray in my mind that there was a deer coming in on him when he done this, but he would just I'm talking about destroyed that thing. It was an ironwood, and I don't know y'all's probably familiar with ironwood bushes. It was just shredded, and it's like every limb's broke, and he twisted it off at the ground, you know, wrapped it up in his horn, and it's that big around. And that ironwood, that stuff ain't easy to mess with. And he just trashed it, and then he carried the bush 5 or 6 yards with him out, and it looked like he was lunging, you know, jumping, hopping. And either he was chasing the doe or he was running off a buck. I put that in my mind, him running another buck off. And I was like, yeah, you're dead, buddy. If you're still doing this, it's game on in here.